All right, that looks like that worked. Okay.
So minutes first. Do you have anything else you want to start with, Jay?
Nope, I'm good with launching right into the minutes.
So we have to review the minutes of 122. Anybody have any comments or revisions that need to be? It looked good to me. They were very succinct and on the point from my perspective.
Move we approve the minutes from the January 22nd meeting.
Any discussion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Want me to do the roll call, Dave?
Go right ahead, Jay.
All right.
Circle.
And I just for what it's worth, we have, if you remember, I got an email from Tody that reminded me, and I also had other conversations about sort of the reconfiguration of the committee. So we have our 5 voting members, 2 alternates, and then 2 liaisons. So I'm going to ask the voting members only, so don't feel. So Mr. Paul Allen,
Approve.
Marvin,
Approve.
Peter,
Approve.
Dave,
Approve.
and Rick.
Approved.
Excellent. Thank you.
Second item, review comp plan edits. So we've got
All
a
right.
package from Jay.
Yep. Karen and I will do this together. So sort of I guess maybe just to, as just a quick reminder, obviously last week we gave you a big package of materials. We went through and you had some edits. So I think largely this week we're going to go through some of those edits, and then the big new thing you got this week was the tabulation. We can spend some time looking at that. Just moving forward, I sort of see our sequencing sort of being like that. I'm thinking next Friday you'll get a host of new things, and then the following Friday we'll probably circle back to those just to be sure that we get all the right corrections, and then hopefully maybe the Friday after that another sequence of new items, and then hopefully we're right near the end of it. So this meeting may be a little more tactical and succinct, shorter than the last one. Maybe not. We shall see. With that, let's jump right into the main item that we had, which was the tabulation of those action items, next steps, really creating that more of an implementation plan. So Karen, you want to intro while I try to get myself sharing here?
Sure. So what we did is in the table that I think was sent out on Wednesday or so, we did go back and put everything in the single table so you can see the vision number, the text of that vision, the grouping that was allocated in the text, and then the step number, the description, and then we have the action timeframe and resources. And what we have this morning is we went ahead and cleaned up a few things that were like, there's some typos and miscellaneous things that happen when you move from Word to Excel sometimes. And we also have done some sorts, which we can go through today as well, to the extent that people are interested. The first table, the table that you're seeing now, is just organized by the vision. It's organized just like the text was. And then we also have done a sort on the time frame, so we can look at near term versus ongoing versus long term. And we've done a sort on the resources and another sort on action. And that can just help us, look at how things are distributed, and the number of ongoing tasks is impressive. So that's essentially what the table does. And we'll send out, after any edits today, we'll send out this new table that also has that'll have the sorts in it. But we'll do the edits of anything that comes out of today and send that back out to you this afternoon. So I'm not sure how we would like to do this. Would you like to look at the sort that looks at the time frame first?
Sure. Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
That
I guess I should ask, is there any question about the organization of the table and how it works?
Just one comment. If you could take and have lines 1, 2, and 3 as a header, so as you scroll, you don't lose it.
Oh, it should have been that way.
You're talking about this one, Alan, right here?
Oh, when you scroll through it, I'm sorry, it's there when you print.
Right, no, when you scroll
yes.
down, you lose your header.
Yes.
Yeah, split the screen.
Okay,
Better do freeze pane.
yes, sorry
Yep.
about that. I was working with I fixed the print so it printed like that, but I didn't fix the table. Okay.
Any other general comments on is this what folks were thinking when we were talking about it? No.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's excellent. I think it helps put wheels on the wagon. And I know it was, a lot of agita about, getting from the high level principles down to, the action plans. And this is precisely what we needed. So thank you.
Right.
Yeah, at first I thought we could do away with all the repetitive cells there, but if we're going to be sorting it back and forth, I guess we need to, you need to copy those over and over, unfortunately.
Yes, I thought about that. And what I think we can do for, a printable table, if we want later, we can collapse the repetitive columns. But in case anybody was sorting, I didn't want them to lose I didn't want them not to be able to get back to the original sort.
Yeah, and it also helps, one of the things, it also helps sort of, particularly with the step group, it helps ground the next step back into the comp plan so you know where to find it. And the context because some of these sentences, when you read them by themselves, you're sort of like, well, what exactly is that so anyway.
Yeah, I guess that was my only comment. And Karen J, I think you've hit it. As a printed item, or as something that would go in a printed document, this probably needs some massaging. But in terms of a useful document for us to see things, sort them, and all the rest, I think this is fantastic.
Great. Okay. Well, do you want to start with looking at the time frame? And Jay, I think we did a table last night, right? That shows.
Yeah. So essentially, this right now is listed, it looks like, by time frame. Yep, time frame sort. So long-term first, we had, as we went through them, there were 14 listed items as long-term, 50 as near-term, and 69 ongoing. So that's the breakdown as we have it now. Certainly, the time frames are, as we talked about before, near term means 1 to 5 years and long term greater than 5 years. And I also think that ongoing doesn't necessarily mean to keep doing the same thing we're doing. It means we're working on it now and we may need to do modifications as we go. So yeah, as Karen said, it was kind of eye-opening to sort of see all the things where, 69 of them were already at least touching on in our daily work or weekly work or yearly work, whatever the case may be, amongst all the committees and staff members and council and such. So is there anything that resonates there with folks?
I guess the only observation I make, and this isn't surprising, but all the long-term items are high resource allocation items as well. So, and again, for things that will be longer term implementation plan, that doesn't surprise me. It's just an observation, and something that we can maybe look for in particularly ongoing items as well.
Hey, I'm sorry I'm late, but I couldn't find the link and then I couldn't get in and whatever.
Happy to have you.
Yeah,
We understand.
At 8 a.m, no.
Anything else jump out? Is there anything I can scroll to? I'm trying to think how best to try to do this without scrolling and giving everyone a headache as they watch words fly by on my screen. So
I only have a general question, and that is there any estimated end time for the ongoing group.
I think they all have their own. I think some are ongoing and will perpetually be ongoing. Yes, and some are ongoing with a time frame. So I think it's hard to sort of encapsulate the ongoing as one category, if you know what I mean.
My suggestion then is, and not to make work, but for those of us coming in and are new, I'd be interested at least in those two groups, the ongoing that are perpetual and the ongoing that do have an end date.
Okay. Right, so
perhaps
some of
split it
those
out to-
ongoing, maybe like projects that once you check them off because they're done, and some of them are ongoing because that's part of our daily work. And what the table is saying is, in this daily work, we need to do some review and change and maybe think about it. But okay, that's a great suggestion.
I was gonna say, and Karen, maybe a distinction in the ongoing category, therefore could be ongoing and in process.
Okay.
Because in process is going to finish at some point or has an endpoint to it, whereas ongoing is, to Jay's point, it's perpetual.
Right. Okay, that's a great suggestion. I think that helps staff as well. Whoops.
So in process would be those that sort of do have a, there's an end to it, where the ongoing is maintain a balanced budget. That's something we do perpetually.
exactly, yeah.
That would be an ongoing. Okay. Yep.
Okay. And I guess, was there anything in the near term that you thought was, maybe we were overly aggressive in thinking about it, or does it all sound pretty reasonable?
It's a big chunk, but it seemed logical. I mean, it's until you really start getting into the fine points of it, you don't totally understand the scope. So, yeah, I mean, it made sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. The nature of this is to see the individual tasks in one place, but you can't see this without knowing the context of the entire plan. So, in that context, I think, yeah, this is. I didn't see nothing popped out here that in either wording or in prioritization that was at odds with or didn't mesh with the broader vision and the plan itself.
Okay. Great. Okay. Are we ready to look at a different sort? Are we comfortable with how the time frame went?
Pull up the sort by the action sort. So that would be column F, right? Where we just tried.
Yeah, go to the bottom tab.
Yep, I'm on the action sort one.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Yep. So I was just sort of
I
highlighting.
color-coded them, and then I realized I'd forgotten what the color coding was.
So yeah, again, here we tried to just capture at a very high level, just give people the quick snapshot of what this generally means. What type of action are we talking about? And so again, be interested in your thoughts on that.
Right. And Jay, it might be helpful for you to distinguish for folks between, sort of zoning review versus land use regulations, and, how that was determined.
Yeah. So some of these, as I was going through them and that relate to development, really thought about there's a difference between land use and zoning, and then development regulations. Zoning is really about where the particular uses can occur and at what density particular uses can occur. Whereas development regulation is once you say, okay, such and such use can be in such and such area. Now, what does that mean for setbacks and impervious coverage and building height? And so that's really the development regulations. And then when I was thinking about land use, it's really the connection to all the uses together, sort of the nexus where everything starts to come together. It's a little broader than just either the where something can go, or once you say it can go there, how it can be developed. Land use is that broader question about what are the overall impacts to the community. So that's sort of how those break down, and hopefully that made, as you read through it, that makes some
Yeah.
sense, or you're able to, if you're able to figure that out, sort of, that'd be good.
Yeah, Jay, I'm also thinking about how this is perceived when it makes its way out into the world. I mean, it's a pretty daunting chart. And we didn't go to this level last time until the implementation committee. So I guess I hope we can couch this, that this is, the initial step, and I hope people don't want more from this at this point. I mean, this is a daunting document.
Yeah.
And because we've provided it, I hope people aren't going to expect that there should be another level of detail that goes into it at this point in time, that this is really a next step after the comp plan is presented, and that it is a living document for people to use as a tool going forward.
Yeah, that's the type of language tried to capture in the sort of written narrative piece, that, this is just a framework. We recognize it'll change as community priorities change, but.
I see Rachel. Rachel?
Yeah, I was going to say just what Jay said, and that's in the introduction. We pretty much outline what this is and what it isn't. That it is first rough steps. It's likely to change as some circumstances change, but it's a rough framework that people can use, the town can use going forward. There were plenty of wiggle words in there. It said everything, but this is not cast in concrete.
Yeah.
At some point we may want to emphasize at any meetings. It's
exactly.
This is one way to look at it.
And just to make sure we're letting people know, when we did the sort, which was very helpful for looking for consistency and how we categorized everything. So there are some slight wording changes in the actions from the original text that we gave you last week. We didn't change the category basically, but we wanted to make sure that everything was couched in the same type of programming language. And so we're still working on making sure there's consistency in the actions. For example, most of the items are really in the planning actions. It's a planning action. And so we were trying to make sure that we had planning on everything. And I just noticed one that on the development review, we need to catch a couple of those, but we are trying to make that distinction just so that the words in the box are an action as opposed to a label. If that makes sense.
Right. Like I think we'd be changing economic development to economic development plan, or some type of action, right?
Yeah, and the one thing I observe on that, and just a suggestion, is any of the actions which only have a single item associated with them, maybe should be grouped with other things that they would logically be grouped with. In a document like this, it strikes me that there probably shouldn't be actions that are singular in terms of that have only one item. That makes it less useful as a category. So that's just a suggestion. I noticed a number of those when I did the sort of the Excel document that you sent the other day, and some of them seemed like they were very, very close to one another. And to give you one, there was, I think, land use regulation, and then another one had land use regulation or land use planning, and then another one, they had two with land use planning and development resources. So clearly those could be grouped together. So just a suggestion to maybe as you guys go through and do a final edit to this, that might be something to look for and sort out.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what we were noticing, and we're trying to go back and do some of that. So we're still working on some consistency. But yeah, so those single ones didn't make a lot of sense, and they were so close to some of the other categories. Absolutely.
And again, I think for you guys as an editing tool, that's one of the values of having this tab format.
Yeah.
You can sort that, and those things will just pop out, and you can make those edits quickly. So.
Exactly. The one question I think Jay and I were discussing last night was whether or not, like, where this appears, or sort of a more readable version of this without the repetition. We were thinking that this table should be the place where these actions and time frame and resources live, as opposed to putting it in the text like the original document that you got. But I don't know how people feel about that. So basically, people would be reading the driving success with all the descriptions and basically what you guys were originally given. But we would take this out.
So we
and just let it live in the table that would follow this chapter.
So on the screen, I think you can see, so this is the original document we talked about last week, and some of the tweaks that occurred going into this week, but we take this piece out in this sort of written document, and then have this spreadsheet part of that driving successes chapter, so that you could sort of just read through them without sort of getting lost in the who, what, and where type thing. And then that would follow, right? This would follow, so you could have that implementation piece.
Is it going to be readable at 8.5 by 11? There's a lot of text in there. Yeah.
Well, I think once we, collapse or do some of the, well, what they would see is can you go back to the first one, Jay? The first tab that's organized strictly. This is organized strictly by vision, and then by
we
the
could collapse
steps.
all of this.
Exactly.
We could collapse all that, and then we could collapse. We'd have
Parts, yeah.
subgroups
Groups
further
of those,
collapse.
yeah.
Yep.
So I do think, what I was thinking about that too. It does print on an 8.5 by 11. You can read it, but I also think, by and large, we're in the digital age.
Yeah.
So this can be right on the website, and we can break down the comp plan by different chapters and sections, so people can just hit hyperlinks. So it may not be the greatest thing on an 8.5 by 11, but at the same time, I'm gonna go ahead and guess that the use of this plan in the next 10 to 12, 15 years, however long it's a viable plan, will be electronically.
Yeah.
So.
Can you print these pages landscape and put them in the volume, and people
Yeah.
just have to turn the book, that's all.
Yep, I think that's how it would look probably, Alan.
Mhm. Yep.
I printed it as landscape, and it's readable for sure. Except you don't see it's good.
I printed it by landscape, and I needed a magnifying glass. Well, let me explain that once folks get to a certain age, this size print doesn't work. And we have an awful lot of people of that certain age in Scarborough. Many of them with time on their hands to look at things like this. And I do remember, I worked for the National Education Association, and I do remember our annual convention of some 10,000 people being held up by the retiree group who wanted everything that the NEA put out to be in 12-point font rather than 10-point font so that it could be visible. It was a fascinating convention. But as I get older, I understand what they're talking about. So yes, you can print it out. I can sort of read it. But it's going to work better if it's on screen and people have the ability to increase the size of the font as they go along electronically reading it. I think we don't have a lot of choice once it's printed out, but certainly a way to make it easier to read online would be helpful to a lot of the constituencies.
Mhm. And once we're able to collapse the vision text and the groups and all of that, that should make it easier to give us a little more space too.
Yeah, and I would weigh in with Rachel's too, as a former affirmative action officer for a very large company. You do have to watch that, the readability and whatever, particularly in documents like this for the public. So I don't particularly, yeah, I can't read this, and I don't really need reading glasses. So it's like, what the heck? Just so you know.
Right.
Yeah, we just need to make it available in a variety of mediums, I think.
But older people are going to read it in print. They aren't going to read it on a computer.
Right.
One suggestion potentially is you could include a smaller table at the end of each vision for just those vision items.
Oh, okay.
That would allow you to eliminate those columns entirely. And increase the font size on the rest of them. It also probably makes sense to see that in bite sizes within the printed document. And so you kind of kill two birds with one stone. You make it a little bit more digestible, each graph, each table a bit more digestible, and you make it more visible. But I think having it online, the idea of having hyperlinks online to access the entire table in one place, that makes perfect. I think that's, there are going to be people who want to sort the whole thing, and I think making that available outside of the printed document makes a lot of sense.
I think those are all great points, but I also think that we may be underestimating the extent to which people of all ages now are digital, especially given the past 10 or 11 months. But I do fully agree that we need to make it as readable as possible in all forms.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, so we don't, because I was sort of forgetting, that the preceding pages will have the vision, each one, the first 3 or 4 categories is going to be laid out individually. Right, so that's categories or columns A, B, and C are already going to be sort of laid out for folks to be able to, actually, I'm sorry, and E. They'll have that ability to sort of read through those, and this is really just then about as we're talking about the actions and time frames. So but we can certainly work to get that collapsed down a bit and easier for people to digest.
Yep.
The other thing you can always do too is you could print for those people who need it on 11 by 7, put this on an 11 by 17.
Right.
And for those who request something bigger, you can, provide that. So there are multiple ways to address this.
Good. Anything further on the table matrix?
Rachel, I find I need a 24-inch screen now.
Or bigger.
Yeah, I find I'm wearing my reading glasses, and I've got a magnifying glass someplace around here. I use it for the planning board.
And we did have one more sort. And like I said, this afternoon, after we've made a couple more edits based on this discussion, we'll send the table out again so you can see the sort. At the bottom of this spreadsheet, there's a different tab for each sort so that you can go back and forth pretty fast and not lose the original organization. So this one is organized by resources. So the categories go from 1-star resources and then 1 to 2 resources, or 1 to 2 rating, and then 2, and then 2 to 3, and so on. And so the orange lines break up the where those divisions are.
Were there anyone that folks saw we were way off on our guess of resources?
Nothing's jumped out.
Okay.
As I indicated last time, this is a snapshot in time. So
I guess my only question was, there are a few that were 1 to 3 stars, which I just wanted some help in kind of understanding how to interpret that, because that's kind of everything, right?
That is, yeah, and I think some of those, I recall sort of doing those, and it's been a little bit, but there were some that are in this sort of ongoing time frame where it's like, okay, yeah, there's a little something we need to do right now, but it's also a larger overall project. So I think some of these there's multiple things that occur to sort of hit them. So let's just sort of pick the first one here. So establish and codify thresholds and standards for considering existing and future potential flood conditions when building and rebuilding at-risk public infrastructure. So that is pretty much every infrastructure project we do, we need to look at these things. And so sometimes we may be redoing a culvert and it's a very simple, thing to address this. Other times we may be rebuilding some other type of infrastructure, and to address sea level rise, it changes the whole notion of the project, goes from just a repaving to building a bridge. And I'm just throwing, things out there, of course. So I think that's I think it just sort of captures the complexities of some of these, that they're not necessarily, all of these aren't necessarily just one item that happen. There might be multiple actions that occur to address that issue.
I guess in that, I'd kind of potentially draw a distinction then, because I look at something like the set guidelines and policies that will guide future development to growth areas, et cetera, et cetera. It strikes me that what you're kind of talking about there is setting the guidelines and the policies probably is not a 3-star item, but there probably will be 3-star outcomes as a result of changing those policies or changing those guidelines. If I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly.
Yeah, and I guess, Peter, the way I would look at that one is sometimes changing a guideline or policy of the town is going to be easy. Everyone's just going to agree to it. Other times it might require an intense year-long public input process. And so that's where I sort of see that, that's how I come up to 1 to 3. Again, sort of saying, yeah, I mean, sometimes council does a quick action. Not too often. I'm sure, as the counselors will remind us, it doesn't happen too often, but sometimes it's 1 or 2 meetings they're able to get something done, and then sometimes we're working on a comp plan for 3 years.
Well,
try to put a cell tower up.
Well, Jay, the one thing I noticed, again, looking at the chart makes things more visible. For instance, if we look under the balanced target growth in the natural environment, we have as one action, set guidelines and policies that will guide future development to growth areas, while also providing necessary public facilities and infrastructure. And I'm wondering, is that perhaps 2 actions rather than just 1?
Well, I guess some of this gets to, we're now reading this out of context of the plan, right? And that's where we sort of need to remember, this doesn't stand by itself. We've got to then say, what the heck does this actually mean? All right, let's go back to the balanced target growth and natural environment section of the comp plan and read this in the full context. So you're right, it may be 2, and some of these might be able to be broken down further, but I don't want to lose focus of this is in the greater context.
Yeah.
Marvin?
Perhaps I missed it, but as best I understand the conversation right now, and I think I agree with every comment, particularly about the 1-star to 3-star section. And I understand this is a snapshot. Is there an index area to guide people through these details that would be, Jay, I don't know how you do it, but what you just described as being the reason for 1 to 3 stars? Let's see, is there one, did I miss it, where you could give a practical description of an example, so that the skeptics among us who go to this and see 1 to 3 stars, when I see that, I sort of throw my hands up. And yet, if I had a definition very specific about some detail, it would assuage my skepticism. I'm thinking of those not very close to this document who see it for the first time, that type of thing, and hopefully that's helpful.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think Jay has highlighted the section I was thinking about, and what I had originally thought, and I think I'm still there, is that under the vision 1, let's say, that all references to action be removed. When you guide future land use, get rid of all of the those things, because those will appear in the chart. And then as part of the introduction, I thought that section really needed to be moved to the heading of the chart with an explanation at the top that says, this is how this works. This is what 1 asterisk to 3 asterisks means. In other words, take that information out of the body of the text and move it into, how do you use this chart? And this is what it means, and put that information there, which then people are reading the chart, and what they need to know about how it works is right there at the top. So those people that only want to take a look at the vision and the next steps, that's what they look at. If you've got, and they say, I like this, I like the vision, I don't need the details, I like the next step, I understand it. Those people who really want to dig in, go to the chart, and they have the instructions on how to use it and what each of those items mean. So I had thought in my original edits that we simply say, for those people who want to, look at this in explicit detail around what the next steps really are going to potentially look like within the framework of, this is a rough approximation of what we're going to be doing, that they can pull the chart out wholesale and have all of the information they need right there to read the whole chart and to understand the language.
Yep, looks like Jay's doing that on the fly.
Just to give a rough idea of what that would look like, we would, again, as I'm hearing it, let's come back here, take all these out of this section, really change, basically take this paragraph that tells you what all that means and drop it in here.
Yeah, and in that section that you took out, simply say, refer people to the chart itself on page, or whether you want to call it a chart or an appendix. I think I had originally said, look at Appendix X to find the full details of the proposed, of the rough plan.
Yep.
Or however you want to say that.
Right, so somewhere before you read all this stuff, let people know that, all right, you're gonna read through all this stuff, but then there is a chart that shows you the full implementation plan or action plan, whatever the terminology is. Yeah.
And Jay, it may be helpful for us to go ahead and add a sentence about, and some steps have a range, and, that reflect a range of activities within that step with different types of resources and timeframes.
Yep, it's loose. Yep.
Yeah, at the top of the chart, if it's all on the chart page, then you have the flexibility to add a little more. What you're doing is adding a how-to.
Mm-hmm.
How to understand this chart and how to separate it, how to sort it, and how to think about resources, how to think about time frame, how to think about action, or something along that line.
That makes a lot of sense. General agreement around that approach?
Yep.
Karen and I will work that into the next round of edits. I think that really the next step, as Karen said, what I sort of foresee happening from here is, we have, as she already laid out, we have a little work to do on the action plan, and just getting the verbiage right, or the
Consistency.
The consistency. Thank you. We'll make these amendments, and then unless the committee feels the need, my take is we'll really start to weave this into the holistic changes that we have our sort of InDesign copy editor do, and that's when this committee will see it next, if we have general agreement around the approach. That is acceptable to folks. That's how I would see moving forward from here, and we can move sort of driving successes off of this draft level anyway, and see it a few weeks down the road.
Agreed from here. Yep.
Can't wait to see the InDesign version.
Either can we. Once we're there, that means we're real close.
Is this going to meet what the counselors are looking for?
I'll look to my counselors to.
Yeah,
I defer to
You could look at them.
the alternate. I'd let her speak first. So she's there.
I have to tell you, I'm half toned out because I've got 8 million other things going on in my life. But I'll be honest with you. I'm more a broad brush person, so all this detail is like, yeah, okay, just get to the point. But that's me. I do know, though, we are producing this document for people who are way more detailed. They like the details more than I do. I think I love all the work you've done. I think it's great. And I like how you've got this, step descriptions and then actions and whatever, but I wouldn't go too crazy with it either, to be honest with you. You can overdo it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want people, burning themselves out doing this for a document that Jay, plug your ears. It doesn't mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't. The general public, they don't even know what this is. I mean, it's used in planning purposes and whatnot. So, and then we base our GMO and some other things off from it. But it's anyway. That's just the sort of mood I'm in this morning. Sorry. Go ahead, Dawn. You're my detail guy.
Jean Marie and I are kind of like yin and yang here a little bit. So and together, hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, I think this accomplishes exactly what was a concern for some people, particularly when we're trying to talk about this plan in the context of the outstanding work that was done in 2006. So it does fulfill that. And, the folks that are going to be working on it are the experts, and you'll be assigning it. And the council, Jean Marie's right, will be looking at it at a different level. But I think it's, for me, it's very reassuring, and it's tedious, and I don't have a natural bias for detail, but I force myself to do it. And it's not easy.
You could have fooled me, Dawn.
but nice work. I mean, I know you put a lot of work into this, Jay,
Yes.
and Karen and group. So thank you.
Yeah, and please don't think I'm being critical. I'm not. It's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But you guys need it this way, so I get it. I get it.
And speaking as somebody much closer to the general public, experientially at least, yes, you're not interested in this until you are interested in it. And then the details matter. So it's a daunting document. It's impressive at the same time. And I think for any of the general public who do dip their toe into this sort of thing, very useful. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. I know at least one of us needs to hop off, I think around 9, and some others said they think they had a 9:30 stop. So I'm feeling like our conversation around the chart, we have a good direction on.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to, so then really we just talked about, excuse me, some edits on the introduction to the driving successes. And so, and I think here, if I recall from the last conversation, it was, you know, the original version or the version, yeah, the current draft has sort of a very explicit statement about the long range planning charge, but we had heard some comments that might be a little bit overstated. So then I softened it with a bunch of planner fluff that didn't make any sense. So hopefully we found the sweet middle ground here. And made it a little, you know, tried to make it a little clear that yes, it is the town council that, you know, has the ultimate role, and the long range planning committee sort of will serve as quarterback to this thing, and but working with all sorts of other committees, and again, everything ultimately boils up to council anyway. So
Jay, I did have one comment here. Jay, I did have one comment, and I just want to make sure the charge that you've struck here is the charge that goes back to the, it's, you know, in the administrative code, it goes back to the charter. So that is the charge. That's the current charge. And I don't think we can just strike that. That would require some additional work. So that was, and apologies for going back and forth on this. I know we're trying to do a lot of things, but you know, I went back through everything on this particular line, and that is the strike through is in fact the current charge. So we probably need to put that back in there for at least for now and see what happens later. You know, Rick and others were here when it was written, so if I don't have this right, let me know.
So I guess, yeah, I think that's, as you just point out, why the original language was as it was. But I guess I want to be mindful of and respectful of, it was really coming out of that council workshop that we heard. Let's soften that a little bit. And so I guess I wonder, my feeling, and again, is that the sentence we have now in this, third paragraph about the long range planning coordinating the implementation process still sort of says that, yep, that's their charge, without overstating it. But I, again, will defer. This is the hard
my point is, you can't strike language in here that is the actual quote of the charge, the current charge. That is my point. So, and I don't know, I started to go back. I didn't watch the entire workshop, but, you know, I doubt very much the council would have given direction to the long range planning committee to change the charge.
Rachel? Yeah.
Yeah, I did the edits, and I wasn't aware that well, I didn't actually cross out that what's crossed out there. But because it was crossed out, that's why I added what the long range planning committee was to do. My suggestion is that in paragraph 2, the struck out language be pulled out separately into a separate paragraph, which says the charge, you say it's in the charter, Don?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
then it's pulled out and it says the charter charge of the Long Range Planning Committee is, and have that language there. And then we can look at the third paragraph and say, so how does that actually operate when we get to the comp plan? So keep the specific charge is called out so people can see, and then say this is the practical way that charge is carried out. If you think it's something that would work.
yeah, I think it does execute. It says how you're going to carry out the charge, but yeah, I think that the way you've described would be a good way to edit again. I know this is very difficult trying to edit real time, but thank you.
Yeah, well, I think since I think we really need to keep that charge there if it's in the charter, at least as of the charter now. And then the next paragraph, so there's one more paragraph there, and the next paragraph is how we do it.
Yeah, and I guess that was the point I think that was just raised that you just said, Rachel. Currently, there is a charter review committee. And so I wonder how much this type of discussion would benefit from being circulated with the town council. I mean, obviously it's going to go to them, right, for their review, and they sort of are envisioning a multi-step review of this, not, you know, just a quick one and done, but I think they're going to vet it pretty well. So yeah, I also understand, you know, appreciate wanting to capture the language from the charter for this committee. You know, do we need to capture the language of the charter for what the council's role is and planning boards? So
Well, you could go really deep on this.
Still there?
You can go really deep on it. I think the fact is, you have a suggestion for how to kind of leave it for now, and then there could be other changes. I mean, there could be a charter change. You could put this forward to the charter from this committee. You could put this forward to the charter committee and the council to say, this is our recommendation to change the charter. But what you've done here is, but I don't think that's what you're recommending. And Jean Marie is also pretty keen on this along with Rachel, so.
And I'm on the charter committee. I'm one of the representatives. That's part of why my eyes were a little crossed today. That was last night. I wouldn't get tied up into the actual verbiage myself unless it's required. I think you can do a basic outline of what the roles are for each party or each group. I mean, again, but is there, Jay, I'm going to ask you this, since I've not crafted comp plan before, do you have to use the actual verbiage from? So then why not just do something general? Because then if for some reason the charter committee decides they're going to change long range planning or how it works, you're not tied down. Does that make sense? I mean, generally speaking, long range planning is in charge of.
My sense is we're overthinking this, that it really just needs to be a simple statement.
Yeah, I agree.
This isn't, I think if we get too legalistic or too charter language type documentation, it's going to feel off relative to the tone of the rest of the document. I like the changes as they've been made. I actually am pretty comfortable with them.
My apologies, everyone. I have to leave for another 9 o'clock meeting, so sorry about that.
Me as well. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Good weekend.
Well, I'll complicate matters even one more step, and well, it's not complicating. I do agree with you, Don. And the place I'm coming from is that as again, a very new member of this committee, I'm inspired by the language that Don's describing in the charter. So I like seeing it, but I also agree with you can overthink this. But if I have to vote, I would vote on keeping that one sentence. And
I just want to add to this, and not to beat a dead horse, but in your, on page 158 of the, of the last version I have, this is what we're editing right here. It that red line statement is the charge of the committee.
Mhm.
So if you take it out and you put in other language, people may draw the wrong conclusions about that. So, and I'm not, don't want to foreclose or predict what will happen to this after we go through it in terms of review by the charter committee and also by the council. But anyway, I think you've kind of heard the positions on it.
Yeah, so now I guess I look to the long range planning committee to give direction. Heard the positions. Again, so either way works for staff. Just want to be sure we're sort of hitting. I think, again, I think the original intent for striking that was to address issues that we had previously heard. But if we feel that the language that was originally drafted works, then we can keep that. And
Is this
Yeah, I
the
mean,
only
if in
reference to the
fact-
charge in the document? Or would have been?
You mean was the question, Dave, is this the only
Yeah,
sort
is
of
this the
reference
only-
to the charter of what
Right.
someone's charge is? I think so. I don't recall where we spell
I would
out
think,
others,
yeah.
but that's,
I mean,
my other 2 cents. My other 2 cents is that it's a very clear declarative sentence that I think is difficult to improve upon unless it's inaccurate.
What happens with these things is if people will be working from the document, the new document, and people will not know. I mean, look at even in our discussion, we didn't really go to that actually is a quote. That statement is a quote. But we didn't, we've kind of gone back and forth on that. What happens is if we kind of water it down or we put another language and on top of that, take out the actual charge, then that's really watering down, I think, what the committee's role is at the moment. Everything can change, but not by just editing this and then putting it forward, editing out the charge.
I concur with Marvin. I think the sentence is a good sentence. It's a simple, declarative sentence. And Don, if it's a quote, then it's a good sentence to have in the charter, a good quote thing to pull out as a quote. I think my comment would be is the next paragraph is the right place for it rather than at the end there, because that next paragraph is laying out really the roles and responsibilities. First, the town council guides and monitors the process. Then the next sentence could very well be the long range plan committee's charge is to oversee, et cetera, et cetera. Because that paragraph really works as here are roles and responsibilities. So yeah, the sentence though is to Marvin's point. I agree. It's a good sentence. It's very clear.
and again, if the counselors are satisfied keeping it in, I think the original intent was to address things we had heard at the council forum. And so as I said, I'm pleased to go either way with this one. And if it
One
comes
thing
up,
to observe, Jay, is that you might not need that second sentence. The long range planning committee will coordinate
Right.
the implementation process. You can just get that sentence out and say town council guides and monitors. The long range planning committee's charge is X, and it functions as the central clearinghouse.
Yeah.
And so that to me works nicely as a flow of language in the paragraph.
you're saying take out this piece right here.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yep, I missed that one. Yep. Yep. Something like that. We'll need to obviously
Yeah, work the grammar.
soften the edges and work the transitions or what have you, but
Okay, everybody happy with that for now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's keep going, Jay.
actually, hang on. Sorry, I just want to be sure I capture this and don't lose the.
Yeah.
Let's call this one. All right, and then I think the last thing we had. All right, so we've done driving successes. We've done some tweaks to the. So we're back at the introduction section, and so really this is just some. I think what I've done here. Yeah, I accepted everything that we had sent you previously. So what you're seeing red and underlined are the changes from the previous version that we saw last week. I don't think we had a whole lot to do here. I think just a little bit of tweaking.
Minor grammar nit, Jay. In that red section on the third paragraph, I think are likely to be required to keep pace with changing dynamics and emerging priorities rather than the changing dynamics and emerging priorities.
So that's deleting the word the, correct? Okay. And then the other thing you'll notice, as I was going through that whole introduction section again, I realized that there's, again, as this was being written in other pieces, there's another redundant page 12. There's a section in there, and basically it was just echoing sort of what the plan does, and that it builds on the foundation. And so it's like, okay, how many times can we say this? So just another page that was proposed to be deleted out, which I had sent you as well. Yeah, I think I just, talked about deleting that. And then there's just adding a little bit to the how to use the plan about the driving successes chapter. Again, this is where we're starting to fold in that, hey, you're here on page 12, way back on page 160 is where you're going to see everything start to come together. So this starts to let folks know that there's a whole lot in here.
Okay, good. Don?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Again, not to kind of point out a small sentence that creates a long discussion, but does this plan really replace the prior plan? It's an update, and I know I've heard comments from various people at various times in terms of this one. So I know the intent is for it to replace the plan, but do updates really and truly replace prior plans?
Yes, when the council adopts this plan, this is the comprehensive plan of the community. That's why we specifically use the word replace. And actually, I think that was one Karen helped me with. I think I had some other words. She said, let's just, this plan replaces that plan. This will be the comprehensive plan of the community. Much like we have our 2006 comprehensive plan, the prior plan is the 94 plan. The 94 plan is now just a historic document. The 2006 becomes a historic document.
Hey, actually, that was a question I had, because when you go back to that page 8 edit, the 2006 plan was referred to as the 2006 update to the comprehensive plan, full title. Is that just
semantics?
Just semantics? Okay.
Yeah.
Does that mean
Yeah.
this would be the 2021 update to the comprehensive plan as well?
We could call it the update, or we could call it the comprehensive plan. Different towns call them different ways. Legally, it doesn't have, this will be the plan. So whether we call it the 2021 update of the Scarborough comp plan, or we just call it the 2021 comp plan, it will still have the same legal standing. It will be the comp plan of the community. It doesn't, again, because where the 2006 comprehensive plan, that's its title, the 2006 update of the comprehensive plan, the 94 plan has no standing.
No, I was just wondering if there was
Yep.
something in main statute or something that requires this to be an update or whatever. But yeah, no.
Nope, it's however we choose to title it, but this will be the legal document that if we were to be challenged on a zoning item, and that's really where comprehensive plans come into play. It's really only about land use for legal challenges anyway. Comprehensive plans are used for the community to be the guiding document, but their sort of legal standing is in sort of the world of land use and zoning. The other piece is you need to have a comprehensive plan that's been approved by the state to go after certain funding sources. So those are really the two legal nuts, if you will. But of course, locally, this becomes that guiding document.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to make it confusing. I just want to make sure that ministerially we were doing everything that was required and just I had an understanding of that. So no issue on my side at all, just more of a point of clarification.
Yep.
So Jay, I just had a question. So does this mean, so what happens to all the things that were implemented from the 2006 plan? Those things remain in place and they're, you know, and then this update replaces that plan. So, and yet we haven't implemented the aspects, or we will over some point in time implement the recommendations coming from the new plan, the 2021 update. So what the worry I have, or the question I have, is that if you have a higher level, more strategic, more contemporary plan that's more principles based with less details, how does that replace something that was very detailed, was almost 2 times the size and depth and detail?
I guess I'm not entirely sure how to answer that, other than say, then this is the comprehensive plan of the town, and should the town be challenged on any of our land use, really and that's where, that's the item, right? It's all, that's where someone can legally challenge a comp plan, is really just around zoning. And so we have in this plan, that's what, you know, comprehensive plans are generally land use focused documents. And this one is, our past ones have been, and that's really coming out of what the state requires. What the state requires is that you have a future land use plan, where you happen to be calling it our conservation and growth plan, but it's nomenclature. It's the same item, where we've identified our growth areas and we've identified our low, slow growth areas. That's really what they'll be looking at and sort of saying, okay, in your growth areas for Dunstan, you said you want to have, you know, mixed uses and you want to allow commercial and residential activities. If we were to go in and then zone the Dunstan area only single family lots on 2 acres, and someone owned property on there, they could say, wait a second, no, I want to do a mixed use development. And if we were to deny them, they could then sue the town and say, your zoning is not consistent with your land use. And the reason I use Dunstan is this is what happened in our community back in, and you guys who've been here longer know it better than I was at grad school at the time. And so that's how I know about it. But Dunstan Crossing, that was the scenario. The town zoning wasn't consistent. The town was taken to court over that, and it was agreed that, you know, so
if I had this right, let me make sure I have it right. And we have experts on the call, you know, or we did a minute ago, people that, you know, deal with this all the time from planning and also from a legal standpoint. So if we haven't implemented new things, say for example, we create a climate initiative and that results in some zoning changes, you know, whatever we have on the books holds until those changes are defined and implemented, right? Would that be how it works?
It should be.
If I'm understanding what you're saying, so I was trying to jot a note, so let me, certainly all the zoning we have in place right now, nothing changes when we adopt this new plan. Our zoning is still our zoning, right? Until we actually council goes through and makes an adopted change. So it's not as though as soon as we adopt this comprehensive plan, our zoning somehow becomes in question. Was that what you were asking?
Yeah, that's helpful. And I appreciate, I mean, I know Rick actually helped to write a lot of this. I mean, Rick, could you help me with this? I mean, maybe I'm the only guy that doesn't get it, but it would be helpful for me. Thank you.
Well, your question touches on an issue that has bothered me since we started this process. But we're way past the issue, but I'll summarize it for the purpose of the newer people. When we first got into this current effort, I was concerned that we weren't simply issuing some kind of an addendum or amendment to 2006 plan to address any issues in there that needed to be amended or addressed, and that we would end up with a now 2021 comprehensive plan that would incorporate the 2006 plan as amended by our quote unquote update. We ended up, and I was strongly in favor of retaining somebody local to help us on this process. It ended up that we hired this out-of-state outfit that I was not particularly impressed with, never have been, but so be it. They threw an entirely new document at us. I would characterize it, quite frankly, as their sort of off-the-shelf plan with amendments and modifications and additions that would sort of tailor it to Scarborough. Were it not for the yeoman efforts of Jay and Karen, we wouldn't have what we have now, which is something much more tailored to Scarborough and something we can work with. So bottom line on that is we have what we have. As to the issue of how does this tie into the 2006 plan? You know, from a legal perspective, that's a good question. And I've not sort of undertaken any research on the issue. And even if I had, it would be inappropriate for me to give legal advice on this. But I have the 2006 plan in front of me. And in the introduction, it says in part, this update continues the town's long-standing planning process. It refers to the 94 plan and says this update builds on the policies of the 94 plan. So I've always felt that the 2006 plan was freestanding on its own, but had incorporated provisions from the 94 plan, so that if somebody wanted to figure out what Scarborough's comprehensive plan as of 2006, you didn't have to go drag out the 94 plan and read that and then read the 2006 plan and try to weave them together. This time around, we have such a different plan. I mean, I think it's fair to say that we have tried as best we can to pull in aspects of the 2006 plan that remain, you know, in place. Much of the zoning that the 2006 plan that we put in place as a result of the guidance of the 2006 plan remains in place. That's the zoning. It's already been passed. What Jay is referring to in terms of potential legal challenges to future zoning, the law in Maine generally is that zoning has to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. So I guess that's an awful long effort to answer a pretty pointed question. I think that we should get some guidance from the town's attorneys, Bernstein Shore, as to how, if at all, we should tie the current plan to the 2006 plan, but avoid the possibility that we would end up with two plans, the 2006 plan as supplemented by the 221 plan, or the 221 plan building on stuff in the 2006 plan. Remember that much of the 2006 plan was, the meat of the plan was relatively, well, a lot of it was sort of inventories and overviews, historical stuff, which is all in this current plan. I think it would be worth a look at the 2006 plan and a discussion with the town's attorney as to what, if anything, we need to end up saying in this current plan vis-a-vis its relationship to the 2006 plan. So it's not an easy answer, obviously.
So Rick, to the point that you started out with, because I saw that same language in the 2006 plan about the tie to the 94 plan.
Right.
And that was the comment that we've heard through this fall about sort of what is that connection. So I really tried to mimic that language,
right,
by and large, to basically say, yes, the 2006 plan is really informing this plan, and it serves, really at, the foundation for this plan. But again, to the point that I think has come up to Don's point, to make it clear that this is, and that's why we use the language, this plan replaces the 06 plan, because as you said, as a legal document, this is the plan that has standing. And so people don't have that confusion, to make it very clear and explicit that this is that legal document. And yes, it has its ties and its look back to the 2006 plan. And that was sort of exactly what I read in that 2006 plan about its tie back to the 94 plan, but that the 2006 plan, but that 94 plan, once the 06 plan was adopted, that 94 plan no longer had legal standing, if you will. But certainly happy to have the town's attorney sort of take a look, because I imagine this question will come up again at council. And so I think it is worth that, having that clarity.
Chapter 6 of Part B of the 2006 plan was really the heart of the plan, the future land use plan. And I guess it's worth taking as I say earlier, you and Karen have done a great job to try to make what we were given by our outside consultants make some sense. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, the 2006 plan is being supplanted, as I understand it, by this plan. And if it's adopted, it's adopted. And I don't think it opens the issue of somebody saying, well, gee, the 2006 comprehensive plan and the 2021 plan are not consistent, because that's not, that's not the legal argument that comes into play if somebody challenges new zoning changes. They're going to look at those changes, and one of the arguments to challenge them would be this proposed zoning change isn't consistent with your comprehensive plan, and that would be the one we're going to adopt, and not the 2006 plan. It's just guidance. It's really just guidance. There's an interesting case. If I could find it, be happy to share it with everybody. In fact, Jay, I thought I sent you that. The sort of leading case in Maine on zoning and consistency with comp plans. That might be worth people seeing in terms of that issue. But in any event, yes, I think we're headed towards ultimately having the council adopt a new, the current plan, and this will be the comprehensive plan, rather than an amendment or supplement or modification of the 2006 plan. 2006 plan becomes historical in nature and no longer the plan.
Rick, if you have a copy of that case, I'd be interested just to have some background on how this operates.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. It was related to a Portland matter. It's quite some time ago now, but it does go into some pretty. It discusses the general principles of consistency with comprehensive plans. I'll find it and send it. I'll send it to you, and maybe you can send it around to the entire committee. So with that,
Alan, want to go? Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, just going to Rick's comments, I mean, CPIC, as some of us were on that committee back when, basically what we did is we took the changes that the 2006 plan represented and corrected the zoning to match the plan. Did we not, Rick? I mean, that's what we were doing.
well, we had some pretty extensive recommendations regarding development areas and how they should be developed in the future, and as a result of that, we had to do some fairly, after the plan was adopted, the implementation committee then moved forward with proposing the zoning changes to implement what we had recommended in the comp plan.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole section called implementation strategy.
Yeah.
7.1. And yes, it was an awful lot of zoning changes adopted coming out of the 2006 plan.
So
we're not anywhere near that now.
I understand that. So, but if I understand what I think Don's concern is, if in fact the 2021 plan is not in agreement with current zoning as it exists today, then after the plan is adopted by the council, people will start to work on the differences of the zoning and get them more updated to what the new plan suggests in order to get the plan and zoning in alignment. I mean, that's what we did in CPIC from the 2006 plan. So I don't see that would be any different from what we do going into this plan. So if there is some minor or even major misalignment, then after the plan is adopted, we move forward to make that alignment occur again. So I don't think that's any different from what we did from the 2006 plan.
No, process-wise, I agree. I don't think we have nearly the level of suggested zoning changes this time around that we had in 2006.
Right, without question.
And that goes back 4 years ago. That was a decision by council 4 years ago to do this type of plan.
No, exactly. So I guess I'm.
And we took on the bulk of them back with the implementation. Right. So there's
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just don't want the counselors to think that we're putting the town in a position that is not a healthy position to be in, because once we approve this plan, this document, then we will start working on the Excel spreadsheet, if you will, that has been developed to move things into alignment again over the next 12 years.
For study.
So, I mean, that's the intent.
Yeah, I think that this is a very good discussion. My apologies for asking the question, and I know this is, but this is tough to crack, and I think it's really important for us to be deliberate about it. Rick's background and Alan's, recollections are very helpful. We all agree we are where we are, and this is a very different plan. No one's saying forget it and don't use it. However, I do like what Rick is saying and what others are saying about making sure we're clear on, where we are and how we connect with the, with the 2006 plan. And maybe there's a way for us to go back and use the same wording to make sure that that's put into the proposed update, which what we're saying will replace the 2006 plan. So just so we don't create an issue, and I'm not suggesting a long process, but it seems like it would make sense for us to be very clear about that. I think that would help the subsequent work and review process as well, and get us past this, this particular debate. So
yeah,
it's up, it's up to you guys.
So I just want to, on that point, I'm sorry, Rachel, I guess that's what this section is intended to do, because we've heard that comment. So if this isn't doing it, I guess I need to know that. If I need to scratch this and start over, that's fine. But I guess that was, being clear about this plan replacing the 06 plan, that, it goes beyond the 2006 plan, and understanding that there's going to need to be amendments to the policies and zoning. So I guess I just want to be sure that coming out of this meeting, I have a clear indication from the committee if this proposed language is, if we're not hitting the right notes, then I would like to have that known. And
I think it's right. I think it's doing what it's supposed to. Rachel, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's right too, and it's doing what it's supposed to. I simply have a suggestion. I don't know how the implementation committee worked last time, but when I've done some mergers of plans, strategic plans, and what's very helpful for a committee when the implementation committee starts is to do a crosswalk, where you take a look at basically you look at the old plan and you look at the new plan and see first of all where it harmonizes and where some work needs to be done in terms of implementation. So you do that crosswalk first to save yourself some time as you're working on implementing it by saying, okay, this is in harmony, this is in harmony, this is a simple continuation of what we've been doing. Here's something that we need to sink our teeth into and take a look, because it is a bit of a departure from the original, from the older plan. But once I agree, I mean, basically, whether it's a board or a town council, and I'm accustomed to working with governance boards, once they adopt something, that is what it is. The strategic plan from years ago is replaced, and this becomes the new strategic plan or comp plan, whatever the language is for boards. I think the concept of building on a foundation, I think the language that's there works. The details, and the devil is always in them, comes when the implementation committee sits down and says, okay, now what? What do we need to look at? What do we just keep doing? And what changes are we going to have to bring before the town council at some point? And again, I don't know how that implementation committee works, but that's the way plans are usually harmonized, the old plan, the new plan.
I don't think it's necessary to think of it in terms of harmonizing the two plans, because once this plan is adopted, assuming it is the plan. I think the way to look at it, however, is if the 2006 plan said something like zoning at Pine Point should be amended to provide for whatever, X uses. And that never got addressed. And now we have the 2021 plan, and there's no discussion about that issue, that change. It never happened. That might be something that someone would say in looking at the new plan, What happened to that Pine Point change that the 2006 plan said you were going to implement that never got implemented? Maybe that's the sort of thing where something in this plan might say, you know, certain aspects of the 2006 plan were determined not to be appropriate or change or something like that. But it's a little, it's fairly complicated to think that way. I mean, this is not like you have a 10-year-old lease and the tenant wants to make some tweaks to the lease. So you're issuing an amended lease to change some provisions of the original lease. This really ultimately is a whole new document that governs in terms of comp plan governance, and supersedes or replaces or whatever you want to call it, what's come in the past.
Yeah,
But it's a
Rick,
little
you're
more
right.
complicated than,
Rick, you're right.
really
Harmonizing was the
complicated.
wrong word.
Jay, I'm happy to, well, if it's appropriate or not. but-
Yeah, I mean, what I've heard, or what I think I'm hearing, and again, I haven't heard from everyone yet, is, and we looked at this language at the last meeting, that this language seems like it might work, at least for the committee, to go into the plan. But I'm certainly heard that it's worth having the town's attorney help weigh in and maybe provide a supplemental document that gets sent along to town council to really sort of clarify and codify what this process is and what this adoption process is. I think that's what I'm hearing.
I think that makes sense. I think for the document itself, though, knowing that this is a document that will also be used by the public, and I think the language here is clear in the sense of this replaces the 2006 plan. The 2006 plan, in other words, becomes historical. It does not become active, and it loses its active nature. The general patterns of land use are consistent, although some changes may and will be required. And that the town, that upon adoption, changes will emerge through an implementation process. I think this states that pretty clearly, and I like the language used. Although clearly for the town council, I think some guidance or steer from the law firm from Bernstein Shore would always make sense when approving whenever they approve such a fundamental document. I think having some steer from council always makes sense.
I agree. And I think if I dig back in my memory, I also, if in the future the council wanted to make tweaks or make some change to the comprehensive plan, they have some ability to do that. I mean, could that be just a brief mention that if there are things that time fleshes out and, you know, the comprehensive plan does not reflect that, then the town council could go back and make adjustments as needed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Dave, because that's actually an approach that some towns take. Saco is a good example. Their comprehensive plan, they're updating it every year to two. And they just do, you know, a chapter here or a couple of sentences here. So some towns do take that approach where something comes up, they'll just amend their comp plan and then move forward. So far, you know, and that moving forward, that could be what this town does as well if it decides to. So yeah, there's nothing, while we talk about comprehensive plans, you know, state statute says they're good for 12 years and there's nothing to say you can't update it whenever the community feels that it's not serving their need.
I think this has been a really good conversation, at least from my point of view, about the purpose and use and reason for the comprehensive plan. Jay, you mentioned when you were describing, I think, what the plan is for, you said to access certain funding sources, if I have that right. I have no idea what you mean, and I would be interested at another point if you could send me or otherwise advise me as to what those certain funding sources are as they apply to the reason for the plan. please do so.
I don't think I
And-
could do it succinctly, Marvin. It's far layered throughout all the different bureaus and boards and departments of the state. It would be, we could take years figuring it out. I
Well,
mean,
may-
I hate to say I can't answer the question, but I can't give you I can't just sit down and within 5 or 10 minutes. I don't even fully appreciate all the layers. You know, it's when we apply, sometimes there's a checkbox that says, do you have a plan that's considered consistent with or has been adopted consistent by the state? Sometimes we have that checkbox, sometimes we don't. So it's, yeah. So sorry,
Well-
not to.
You've answered the question. And I wanted to say also that very much appreciate your guidance, Rick, with your answer to Don's question. And certainly we'll want to see that case that you'll send to Jay. And otherwise, I support all of the above of what everybody has contributed to this. So I don't know if we're taking some kind of vote, but I vote in favor of what direction this conversation is taken.
Yeah, Jay, I hope you have enough. I unfortunately do need to be moving on. So is there anything else I can help with before we bring this to a conclusion?
Nope, like I said, I think the direction I'm hearing is generally this is the language that this committee wants to see kept in the document. But as we move forward, I'll work with our town attorney to get, to put together some legal analysis and clarity for council because ultimately, as we talked
Yeah.
about, they're the ones who have to vote it and know what the heck they're doing. So that's probably good that they would know. So.
As we would expect. Yep.
So.
I can agree, we'll vote on it, but whether or not we know what we're doing, that's a whole nother question.
Speak
we
for
need to
yourself,
have-
Dawn.
Do we need to have public comment
Oh, yeah.
before we end this meeting?
Yeah, is there anybody?
We do have one member of the public, Miss Bristol. If she will look to see if she raises her hand. I don't see it yet, but Allison, if you wish to speak, go ahead. I'll just, she hasn't raised her hand yet, so I know people have to jump off, so just jumping in. Next meetings, you can see, I guess my hope is that by the end of February, that we, as this committee, can feel that this plan is in a good place to ship out, if you will, up to council. I think based on the forums that we did back in October, November, December, we've already bitten off 3 or 4 of the big chunks. We have another 3 or 4 of the big chunks to do. So my hope is that next Friday, my expectation is next Friday, before next Friday, Karen and I will be sending you another host of items like we did here, where we had the introduction, the community profile, the driving successes. We'll have another host of items that will start the conversation on next Friday. Be sure we're in the right direction. Probably circle back the following Friday for any adjustments that need to be made on those items. And then I think largely we'll be through sort of the big items. And then we will, we're going to start working with our InDesign copy editor person to get everything packaged together, so hopefully that once you get that document, we'll have seen all the changes that are coming. So my hope is that everyone is okay meeting sort of basically for the next 4 Fridays, and with the hope that will get us, this committee, at least to a point where we're just about at yet a second time voting this plan out of committee, as you did last March before the whole shutdown. But so if that makes sense to folks, if not, we can certainly adjust that time frame. But
I only have one conflict, Jay, and that's the 3rd Friday of the month.
the 19th, that would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it works for me.
Yeah, that's fine for me, Jay.
Let's get it done.
And Dawn and I are gonna tag team because I know I'm not available the 19th at this point.
Jay, just quick, when do you think the next Insight turn will take place?
I'm sorry,
The next turn of the formatted document.
the InDesign?
InDesign,
Well,
sorry.
so I think we'll start feeding our person, this stuff, particularly the driving successes and the community profile chapter, but we still have the next pieces that we need to work on are sort of the notion about pace of growth, be sure that we're adequately addressing the differences of the town's villages and appropriately just talking about growth sectors. We haven't done that. So, and those are weaved a little bit more throughout the plan. Then here we were able to sort of take the nice chunks that were very clear and definitive. The next layer you're going to see is going to be a bit more complex. You're going to see a lot more of these, on page, like I have here, page 8, here's the change. You're going to see a lot more of those, just given the nature of sort of the next batch of items that we're working on.
Nope, that's helpful just to know kind of what our raw material is going to be
Yep.
for us over the next few weeks. Okay.
So I think you'll see, like I said, a lot more of these type of things.
Jay, I'm going to jump
I have a
on.
quick procedural question. If as we're looking through the comprehensive plan as it is currently, and we have a question or a suggestion, is it appropriate to contact you, Jay, and ask it or suggest it?
So in terms of reviewing the existing plan, yeah, I would say if you have a question, that certainly reach out to me. If you have suggestions for changes, I think that should probably be a discussion with the whole committee to be sure that everyone's in agreement and on board with those changes. At this point, just again, appreciate new eyes are always good. But as we talked about sort of going through October, November, December, we had those forums. And then the committee, we sort of went through point by point what we heard at those forums and said, yep, those are the changes we want to see, or no, we think we've already addressed that. So really went through that. And so that's sort of the list that staff's working on right now, or are those items where the committee has already gone through and said, yes, please work on that type of edit. So not to say there can't be more, but just sort of giving you that history. So again, if there's things you want to see, I think it would be good for the whole committee to talk about them, be sure that it's representative of the group, because that's how it works, right?
No, I appreciate that very much. And I, for what it's worth, I did review all those videos of those previous meetings. Thank you.
Jay, I'm going to jump off, so keep going, but I will see you next Friday.
Very good.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
And Jay, I'm good with all those meeting dates, by the way.
All right, so we'll continue to progress, and if people have the conflicts, I'm already hearing Alan and Jean Marie on the 19th. If more start to pop up, we can always move a day here or there, or what have you. But for now, we'll keep these on the radar and keep moving.
I can make all those dates.
Yeah, I'm good on all of those dates.
Just realized I still had my document up there. All right. Well, now that our chair is left, I'll ask the question. Is there anything else, or are we good for the morning?
Good here.
Very good. Great. Thank you all.
Thanks,
All right,
Jay.
thanks.
Jay.
Thank
Have
you,
a nice
everybody.
weekend, everybody.
Very good.
Thanks.
Good.
Next week.
Thanks.